If you're all sitting comfortably, let's begin. Once upon a time, shut up you. There was a gathering of the great and the good, all sorts of inventors and discoverers of things, literati, glitterati, were gathered there. And among such fine and illustrious company, there was a chap called Neil. And when Neil looked around him at all these wonderful people who had moved the earth and humanity forward in so many magnificent ways, he thought to himself, I do not belong here. And sooner or later, I'm going to get found out that I don't qualify to be here. Now, it so happens that while these thoughts were churning around Neil Gaiman's head, Neil Gaiman, by the way, an author with 36 bestsellers, with feature films and Netflix serials made from his works, utterly celebrated, boundlessly successful, wonderful author. But there he was, standing at the back of the room, and he was joined by an old silverly-haired man, and they bonded over their shared first name. And at one point, Neil number 2 leans over to Neil number 1 and said, what the heck am I doing here? I look around at all these amazing people. I just don't deserve to be here. All I did was go where I was sent. And Neil Gaiman turned to Neil Armstrong, the first person to walk upon the face of the very moon, who uttered those immortal words, one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. And he thought to himself, well, I feel a bit better, because if this person feels like a fraud, an imposter, like they're not worthy of the company they keep, maybe we're all that way. Maybe there's no adults in the room. And he felt a bit better. However, he left it there, and I don't want to leave it there, and we will be talking about that. But let's move on for a moment and follow Neil on the rest of his journey. Because it so happened that he also met another great author by the name of Stephen King. Great author, another author. And Stephen King saw how well Neil Gaiman was doing, and he said to him, this is great. Make sure you enjoy it. And Neil Gaiman says that this is the best advice he ever received in his entire life. And he promptly ignored it for 15 years because he was too busy worrying about where the success was going to go wrong. What would happen tomorrow? What if he couldn't sell any more books? What if the next story was shit? What if the critics trashed it? What if no one bought it? Since I'm not worthy of the company I keep and everyone thinks that I'm better than I am, what happens when it all goes wrong? And he says even to this day that when he gets a new publication of his latest work, that the first thing he notices is a typo. So what's going on? Why are even the most successful people in the world and all of us as creatives experiencing these problems endemically? Imposter syndrome. That's what it's called. And we all know it so well that we know the name of it. Carol Dweck, author of Mindset, terms it like this. Everyone around you might think that you're holding a royal flush, but you're convinced it's just pocket tens. I read that and I was like, I thought I had a fucking 2 and a 7. But we all experience this. From Michelle Obama to everyone in this room, I dare say, to one degree or another. And that fear of not being enough, of being less than, of being different to how others perceive us, leads us to seek success, this illusory idea of perfect success. We live in a black and white world where there's either success or failure. There's achievement or disaster. Everything goes great or it's fucking horrendous. It's not worth doing. We're either stupid or we're smart. And so we hang on desperately to what we have, just like Neil, worrying about the end of the ride. And we experience scarcity mentality. We hang on to these clients that don't make us happy, doing work that doesn't make us happy, for money that doesn't bring us sustainable profit, because we're so scared of losing those clients, because there's this underlying assumption that things are going to get worse. So what's going on? And how does that relate to us? I used to compare myself endlessly with others, and I always found myself wanting. Every day we look on Instagram and look at our heroes or the peers around us. Sometimes it helps us feel inspired, but other times it helps us feel less than, diminished somehow by others' success. Feeling like we're behind in life and always chasing, always catching up. Or sometimes we proudly say, oh, I'm competitive. But what we actually mean is that we need to feel validated and judged to be worthy. When we trust our ability in something, that's when we say, oh yeah, I'm super competitive. I remember talking to someone about this, and they said, but hang on, I don't think, I thought I had imposter syndrome and I was experiencing perfectionism, but I used to speak up when any of the challenging jobs went down in work, and I was like, I'll do that. And I said, okay, but can you tell me about those jobs? Were others able to do them? Were you? And she was like, oh, hang on a minute. No, they were really hard for everyone else and easy for me. And we take it personally when a client gives us feedback. We put ourselves, so much of ourselves into the work, and we tie ourselves in and take it personally.
True that.
And in the midst of our imposter syndrome and procrastination and scarcity mentality, things get fucking difficult. They're extremely challenging, and setback and big, things on the horizon feel like pain. So is it any wonder we ignore them and put them off and procrastinate till the last minute and then feel guilty because we procrastinated? And because we feel guilty, we procrastinate again. And we talk shit about ourselves. I was so lazy this week. I'm a lazy person. Oh, I'm trash. We say things like, I'm not good at this. I can't do this. It's too hard. I'm just going to disappoint myself anyway. We don't do that thing. Or we try loads of tactics. We get all those new self-help books. We get new pens and Bujos and Moleskine journals. Or a new app to help us schedule. And when it doesn't work, we blame ourselves, talk shit about ourselves, beat ourselves up, and cry to the universe, nothing works. And we keep ourselves in these boxes, in these frames. We limit ourselves with these beliefs and the way we talk. Oh, I can't charge that. You can't charge that in Ireland, Dublin, Lithuania, exchange place here. And we overcommit to things. We don't put boundaries down. We experience Zoom burnout. We have back-to-back meetings, and we bleed our work into the weekends, and people demand things of us, and we quietly go ahead with it and let it happen and then complain about it behind their backs. And we experience overwhelm. And we're afraid of speaking up because we don't want to seem arrogant. And other people do things that we praise them for in terms of speaking out about things, in terms of setting boundaries. But when we try, and when we consider doing it ourselves, we think, oh, no, too arrogant. We're so obsessed and afraid of what other people will think, real or imagined. A couple of years ago, I'm getting ready for a wedding, posh wedding, down the country. And I put on my ill-fitting suit, and I feel so ugly. My physical dysphoria just fucking spikes. My anxiety goes up. The feel of the shirt on my back is skin crawling. I found out later, by the way, that I'm autistic, and that has a lot to do with that physical sensation. Anyway, I felt so ugly. I felt horrible. I felt uncomfortable, and I thought, I can't go down like this because I can't turn up and I can't even be present for him. So I got changed. I put some skinny jeans on, t-shirt and a suit jacket, got a friend's support, and then went down. And throughout the day, I started getting these comments, just here and there, little things like, that's very brave. And they started to build up and up. And at one point, I went to walk outside of the place, and I was confronted by this middle-aged woman in pink. And she goes, "How dare you?" And I just froze. And she was like, "How dare you wear that to this wedding?" And immediately I was like, okay, I am about to break and I need to move. So I kind of skedaddled past her, said sorry, ran around the corner and just started bawling, crying in an absolute heap. And I was gone for the whole rest of the weekend. And my mind immediately went to very dark places, but like about myself, right? And I was talking about it later with my therapist. And what had happened was, as soon as this person judged me ill, I separated from myself, joined them, stood beside them, looked back at myself and said, "You fucking piece of shit. I knew it. How dare you wear that, indeed? How dare you be you? How dare you be so pathetic? How dare you get it wrong so much?" And I filled myself with shame and guilt. This, by the way, is the gay version of the distracted boyfriend meme. And I know I'm not alone in this, right? Like, I'm living through the eyes and the imagined eyes of others. I'm looking to others for validation, and I'm experiencing judgment, and I'm judging myself. And if we're walking around feeling like we're not worthy of the company we keep and we're less than other people think and so on, when we get complimented, what are we going to do? We're going to say, well, that's naturally not true. They're just being nice, or they're wrong. And we're going to dismiss the compliment. But if it's negative, it ties right into our idea of ourselves. So we're going to leap on it and say, of course, yes, I am absolute trash or whatever. And we turn into judges of ourselves, judges of other people. That's this cycle and culture of judgment goes on. So why do we spend so much time living through the eyes of others? Why do we worry so much about what can go wrong that we fail to take action? And why is that idea of failure so paralyzing? Why is the voice in our head often our cruelest critic? And why do we listen? Why is fear out to get us? Good news, twist time. The problem is not the problem. I was reading these articles about Neil's story, if we harken back to Neil Gaiman and his experience of imposter syndrome. And these other bloggers were writing about it and talking about their perfectionism. And here's what they had to say. I am a perfectionist. Now, I'm not saying that this is a good thing. You kind of are, since that's the way you're starting. Very interesting language. In fact, it's pretty much the opposite. And sometimes I wish I wasn't one. See the pride in there? See how proud of perfectionism we are all the time, even when we recognize it might not be a good thing. However, I can't really change that. I can't change that, can I? There's no question. It's just I can't change that, full stop. If you can fly to the moon and back after all and still feel the icy claws of imposter syndrome, then it's safe to say it's not going anywhere. Look at that. Look at that language. It's safe to say it's not going anywhere. It's not safe to say. It's fucking dangerous to say. It's life-alteringly dangerous to say that it's not going anywhere. And this belief, it lies under in the subconscious layers of our minds throughout all our cultures. What's going on? Carol Dweck, scientist, psychologist, author of Mindset, calls it the fixed mindset. Imposter syndrome, scarcity mentality, perfectionism, they are symptoms. The problem is not the problem, they are symptoms. The real villain of the piece, Moriarty behind the scenes, the fixed mindset. And the fixed mindset thinks that our qualities are set in stone. It's obsessed with judgment. It lives through the eyes of others. It fears the state of being wrong. It makes us labeled by setback. I failed. Therefore, I feel like a failure. Therefore, I am a failure. And with that is this deep sense of shame and guilt. And this fear of, well, what if I'm wrong? What if I'm wrong? We say things about ourselves like, I wasn't the smartest kid. Imagine leaning down into the face of a 6-year-old child and saying, you're not the smartest kid. You're not a very smart kid. Because that's what we say to ourselves all the time. Oh, I'm so lazy. And we use this definitive language about ourselves, and we learn it early. Carol Dweck ran a experiment with 4-year-olds. And these 4-year-olds were given puzzles that they could all solve. Everyone had a fine time with them, and they all loved it. And then they were offered to play with the same toy or a new toy that they were finding trouble with, that was going to be hard for them to solve, a puzzle that they couldn't immediately do. And over half of the class said, no, we'll take the toy that we know how to play with, and we'll play with that forever, very, very happily. And when quizzed about it, one of the kids said, well, smart kids don't do mistakes. We are conditioned from as early as the age of 4 and before to see being wrong as this inherently problematic experience worthy of shame and guilt, this feeling of wrongness with being wrong. Not only that, but it's a state, a defined state. It's not an action. It's not, I might fail. It's, I will become a failure. It's definitive, permanent language. And it makes us resistant to learning and growing and changing. The other kids, they didn't just act neutral. They were like, oh, I love a challenge. Oh, I knew this was going to be hard. They get excited by it. They love that they don't know. They love the state of being wrong because they don't perceive any such thing as failure. It's not even in their vocabulary. All they know is they're learning, and they fucking love it. This is the growth mindset. This is the joy that can be found in hard challenge when we are not defined by setback and we don't have this identity of shame and guilt and use this horrendous language about ourselves and create these negative black and white filters and feel like we're not worthy of being in the company of the people around us. This is what gives us resilience and accountability, that very thing that we crave. The growth mindset welcomes being wrong. It thinks, I can't do it. Yet, that simple, distinct difference, yet, it belies optimism, which gives us the power to act. It gives us self-esteem, which gives us the power to ask for help when we need it or want it, or when we don't, just to fucking ask for help anyway, because why not? It accepts and embraces the fact that we're works in progress, and there is no need to be perfect ever, that the fun is in the learning all the way through life, alone and together. And I was debating where to wrap this up, but let me just give you 3 quick pillars for how one goes about encouraging that self-esteem, optimism, confidence, and happiness to fail and be in the journey. 1, awareness. We know this very well. It is all around us every day now, quite fucking rightly. It is about being aware that there is a problem, that we all have the fixed mindset and the growth mindset within us at all times, and that every new setback is an opportunity to hear the way we talk to ourselves examine the language, and fire the fucking inner critic. It's not a profession. The guy's an asshole. Demote the guy. Talk with kindly to ourselves, with more compassion for ourselves. Stop being this insanely harsh judge on ourselves and others. And that compassion and patience with ourselves will allow us to notice in the moment when we're doing it, be kinder to ourselves, motivate ourselves towards practicing vigilantly. Every single new fuck up and moment of pain is a new opportunity to reframe, to think kinder, smarter, I suppose you might say. And with that, we can all take one little step, one giant leap into the great unknown.